Howdy, partners! Get ready to saddle up as we take a wild ride through the most outrageous and unbelievable tales of the Wild West. We're talking about a time when the rules were loose, the whiskey was strong, and the stories, well, they were taller than a giraffe in a saloon. So grab your Stetson, spit out that chaw, and let's mosey on into the Wild West. Now picture this. It's the mid-1800s. The East Coast is bustling with cities and factories, but out west, it's a whole different world. We're talking vast prairies stretching as far as the eye can see, towering mountains that'd make a billy goat think twice, and deserts hotter than a blacksmith's forge. Life out here was tough, unpredictable, and often downright dangerous. Outlaws and lawmen played a deadly game of cat and mouse, while settlers risked their necks to carve out a life for themselves. And let me tell you folks, where there's that much grit, determination, and danger, well, that's where the truly wild stories are born. Now, you can't talk about the Wild West without mentioning Jesse James. Jesse and his gang, the James Younger Gang, were notorious for robbing banks, trains, and stagecoaches. They were like the Robin Hood of the West. At least that's how some folks saw him. See, Jesse grew up during the Civil War, fighting for the South. After the war, he felt like the government was treating former Confederates unfairly, so he took matters into his own hands. Jesse's exploits made him a legend in his own time. Newspapers ate up his story, printing every detail of his daring escapes and narrow captures. To this day, people still debate whether Jesse James was a cold-blooded criminal or a folk hero. Let's talk about gold fever, folks. It's a tale of dreams, desperation, and determination. In 1848, whispers of gold nuggets bigger than a grizzly bear's paw started spreading like wildfire. The news traveled fast, igniting imaginations and sparking a frenzy. Word came out of a place called Sutter's Mill, California, and suddenly, it seemed like everyone and their brother was packing up and heading west. The promise of untold riches was too tempting to resist. They called it gold fever, and let me tell you, it was contagious. People were willing to risk everything for a shot at fortune. Thousands upon thousands of people from all walks of life, shopkeepers, farmers, teachers, you name it, dropped everything and headed for the gold fields. It was a mass migration like no other. They were lured by the promise of striking it rich, of finding that one big nugget that would change their lives forever. The dream of wealth was a powerful motivator. Now, the journey itself was no walk in the park. It was a grueling trek filled with countless challenges. Folks braved treacherous trails, harsh weather, and even the occasional run-in with bandits, all for a chance to strike it rich. The risks were high, but so were the potential rewards. Not everyone struck it rich, in fact, most didn't. Many found only disappointment and hardship. But the gold rush changed the face of the West forever. It led to the rapid development of towns and cities, transforming the landscape and the future of the region. Chapter 4: Calamity Jane, the West's most famous frontierswoman. Now, the Wild West wasn't just a man's world, no sir. Women lived, worked, and thrived in this rugged environment, and none were more famous than Calamity Jane. Born Martha Jane Canary, Calamity. Jane was about as tough as a tenpenny nail. She was known for her sharpshooting skills, her colorful language, and her tendency to wear men's clothing. Calamity Jane wasn't afraid of anything or anyone. She worked as a scout, a Pony Express rider, more on them later, and even fought Native Americans alongside General Custer. She drank whiskey with the roughest cowboys, gambled in the seediest saloons, and lived life entirely on her own terms. She was a true original, a woman who defied expectations and carved her own path in a time when that was about as easy as herding cats. Chapter 5: The Pony Express delivering mail at breakneck speed. Imagine this. You need to send a message fast, real fast, but there's no internet, no phones, and the only way to get it across the country is by horseback. The year is 1860, and the nation is expanding westward at a rapid pace. That's where the Pony Express came in. It was a revolutionary mail service that connected the east and west coasts of the United States. These brave riders were the FedEx of their time, delivering mail and news faster than you could say giddy up. They were the unsung heroes of their era, risking life and limb to ensure communication across vast distances. We're talking about young men, some as young as 14, riding day and night through all kinds of weather and terrain to get those messages delivered. They had to be tough, resilient, and incredibly brave. They rode on these specially bred horses, switching mounts every 10 to 15 miles at relay stations, and they could cover almost 2,000 miles in just 10 days. This relay system was a marvel of logistics and endurance. Can you imagine that? The sheer determination and grit it took to be a Pony Express rider is awe-inspiring. Riders faced blizzards, scorching deserts, and the ever-present threat of attacks from bandits and Native Americans. Each journey was fraught with danger, making their accomplishments even more remarkable. Now, the Pony Express only lasted about 18 months, thanks to the invention of the telegraph, but its impact on American history was huge. It paved the way for faster communication and helped unite a growing nation. Chapter 6. Gunfight at the OK Corral, 30 seconds that made history. Now let's mosey on over to Tombstone, Arizona, a town wilder than a coyote in a chicken coop. This place was the epitome of the Wild West, where lawmen and outlaws walked the same dusty streets. It was here, on a dusty street on October 26, 1881, that the most famous gunfight in history took place. The gunfight at the OK Corral. This event would forever etch Tombstone into the annals of American folklore. On one side you had the Earp brothers, Wyatt, Virgil and Morgan, along with their friend Doc Holliday. These men were known for their sense of justice and their quick draw. On the other side, a group of outlaws called the Cowboys, including Ike and Billy Clanton and the McClory brothers. These men were notorious for their lawlessness and their defiance of authority. Now these two groups had been butting heads for months, tensions were high, and it all came to a head that fateful afternoon. The air was thick with anticipation and fear. The gunfight itself lasted only about 30 seconds, but in those 30 seconds, over 30 shots were fired. It was a whirlwind of bullets and chaos. It was a chaotic, close-range shootout that left 3 cowboys dead and 3 lawmen wounded. The aftermath was a grim reminder of the cost of such violence. The gunfight at the OK Corral became a symbol of the Wild West's lawlessness and violence. It remains one of the most iconic moments in American history, a testament to a time when the line between law and outlaw was razor thin. He was just a kid, barely old enough to shave, but Billy the Kid was already a legend. Born Henry McCarty, but known to the world as Billy the Kid, this baby-faced outlaw was said to have killed 21 men, one for every year of his life. Now that number's probably exaggerated, but there's no doubt Billy the Kid was a dangerous character. Billy's life was a tangled mess of poverty, violence, and bad decisions. He fell in with a rough crowd, got caught up in cattle rustling and other crimes, and before he knew it, he was on the run from the law. Billy the Kid's life was cut tragically short when he was shot and killed by Sheriff Pat Garrett at the age of 21, but his legend lived on, cementing his place in the pantheon of Wild West outlaws. Chapter 8. A Clash of Cultures, Native Americans and the West. Now we can't talk about the Wild West without acknowledging the people who called this land home long before the arrival of European settlers, the Native Americans. For thousands of years they lived in harmony with the land, relying on its bounty for survival. But the arrival of settlers brought conflict, disease, and displacement. As more and more settlers pushed westward, they encroached upon Native American lands, leading to tensions and ultimately violence. The forced removal of tribes from their ancestral lands, the destruction of their traditional way of life, and the horrors inflicted upon them in the name of progress, are dark chapters in American history. Chapter 9. The Wild in the West. Critters everywhere. Now let's not forget about the wildlife that called the Wild West home. And I'm not just talking about your friendly neighborhood prairie dog. We're talking creatures that could chew you up and spit you out before you could say jackrabbit. Think grizzly bears bigger than a buckboard wagon, mountain lions lurking in the shadows, and packs of wolves howling at the moon. These animals were as much a part of the Wild West as saloons and six-shooters, but their numbers dwindled as settlers hunted them nearly to extinction, a tragic consequence of westward expansion. Chapter 10. How the West was won, and why we're still talking about it. The Wild West wasn't just a place, it was an idea of freedom, adventure, and the chance to start anew. And even though the days of cowboys and outlaws are long gone, the Wild West continues to capture our imaginations. Think about it. We still watch westerns, read books about outlaws, and tell stories around the campfire about the days of the Wild West. The Wild West represents a time when life was simpler, even if it was more dangerous. Even though the Wild West is long gone, its spirit lives on in American culture, reminding us of our past and inspiring us to dream big. Outrow, so long, partner! Thanks for joining us on this wild journey through the Wild West. We've covered a lot of ground, from daring outlaws to legendary lawmen, from the gold rush to the gunfights that made history. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more amazing stories from history. And the next time you're feeling adventurous, remember the spirit of the Wild West, where anything was possible, and the stories never ended. Until next time, happy trails!